we'll see that they're overly cramped. The technology section with our new 911 system and everything else is not adequately protected and not adequately secured, does not meet federal and state standards, and the current facility just can't house that. So again, the unanimous consensus of F.U.M.P, and this is from the very beginning, was that the needs could only be met through a new facility, and that's why we unanimously endorsed that. Additionally, I'd just like to point out that there were, in evaluating the needs of this particular community at this time, there were two immediate needs identified. When I say immediate, it means that the need is here today and must be addressed as soon as possible. One was the police station, and the other one was the elementary school needs, and need to address the housing of our student population there. And then what we did is we took the other needs, as we had to address them, and put them on a timeline and spread them out, so that in this particular proposal, as it's being proposed, we're hoping to minimize the impact on the tax rate as much as possible by spreading out the projects over a particular period of time. And it appears at about a 7-year time frame when we're talking about 5 to 7 years out on accomplishing all of our goals in relation to meeting the facility's needs, thereby minimizing the impact on the tax rate, because as some of these projects come on the tax rolls after we start the financing of them, some of our other projects which we've been paying for, like the high school and a few other things in the library, will be falling off. And what we'll be presenting in a few minutes again is what the actual impact of these particular projects is going to be. But just for the general public's information, what will be presented at the November ballot, as was presented at the October town meeting, is a new elementary school at the Swan Pond site, the new police station, as we just talked about, and then some schematic design plans for the high school, middle school renovations, and what was the other one? And the reuse of the bachelor school for municipal purposes. Again, one of the major overriding questions in relation to the failure of the school proposal the last time around was, what are we going to do with the bachelor school? And to be honest, we didn't have a good coherent answer. I think this time we do. You know, we are going to use it for municipal purposes. We've decided to retain it. We've looked at alternatives in relation to privatizing it, in relation to selling it, in relation to releasing it, and all of those alternatives were weighed very heavily and aired out ad nauseum for months as far as what should we be doing with that particular facility. And again, the unanimous consent of F.U.M.P was to bring it forward for municipal purposes, and again, using the school administration as the anchor for the reuse of the bachelor school building. And again, the schematic designs will help address exactly what else we're going to do with that particular facility. So hopefully we've addressed any concerns that people might have as to why the police station, why do we need it, why is it going to be located where it is, and what the cost is going to be. So let's move on to the school issues, in particular the proposed new Swan Pond Elementary School, and this will be in relation to why not renovating the bachelor school, what's the story with the reimbursements, and all the other issues that are going to that have been brought forward. Again, as Steve Jervy, if you want to begin to address that, and I'm sure other people have lots of other information to offer.
When the school elementary needs were first looked at, the architects were asked to examine the possibilities of renovating and adding on to the bachelor school or building a new school. You couldn't simply renovate the bachelor school because the size of the existing facility, properly renovated, would only leave about 16 maximum classrooms, and that's just not enough to be effective to administer. It could actually leave us with less than 2 classrooms per grade when you factor in the needs for music, art, computers, resource room. If you had to add on to that facility, and you would have to if it were going to be sufficient to meet the needs of 29 classrooms, you would have to get Historic District Commission approval for a facility right in the heart of town. It's unlikely that that approval would be forthcoming. The Historic District Commission was reluctant to approve the 4 modulars that sit there at the moment as a stopgap measure. You would also have to deal with the impact that it would have on the center of town, the disruption in the loss of the facility for both the playing field, the opportunity to use it for 4th of July, the connection between the common and everything. But still, the architect was asked for the costs, and he put together a cost estimate for what it would take to renovate and add on to that building. And his estimate has been used in looking at the relative costs for a new facility versus renovation and addition. It's more expensive to renovate and add on to that facility. How much more expensive is ambiguous, because it's not clear whether the state would provide any funding. The state has adamantly said no. There's all kinds of discussion about whether no means no. We have a letter from the Commissioner of Education that says no. They will not fund renovation and addition to that facility. We know that they would not do renovation by itself without also building another school, because no plan is acceptable to them that does not meet all of the needs of the elementary level. We suspect that much of the confusion has been generated by people asking if the state would fund renovations. I know there was a letter in the transcript last week, and when I spoke to one of the co-authors of that letter, she was not aware that we were seeking, that it would require additional space in a historic district area. When we look at the cost of renovations, if you take all of the things that would be needed, the construction costs, the cost of financing, the cost of housing the students during the work, there is no way that even when you make every assumption in favor of renovation, you know, the highest possible reimbursement from the state, the lowest possible cost of modulars for the interim, it still is more expensive than building a new facility. This was the kind of work that F.U.M.P has done all along. We've tried to look both at what the needs are and what is the most cost-effective way to meet those needs. A new facility is clearly the least costly approach, particularly when you look at the risks of delay. Right now, we know that if a plan is submitted to the state by June 1st, we will receive 64% reimbursement. We have no idea what will happen if we cannot meet that deadline. The only way we can meet that deadline is to go with the plans that have already been developed for the new school. If we have to develop new plans for a site of renovation, we can't make the June 1st deadline. We would be in limbo as far as the state funding is concerned, because once the grandfathered projects are in the pipeline, any new projects are not guaranteed immediate approval. There's no telling when they would be added to the list. And as far as we can see, the reimbursement would be considerably less, if there were any, would be considerably less than the 64% we're guaranteed right now. The new guidelines indicate right now that our base is 52.89% reimbursement. That's over 11 percentage points below. There are some incentive percentage points that can be added. My best instinct is that we'd end up around 61%. I don't know that. I'm always accused of being too much of a politician. Even if you assume the 69, which people have talked about as the maximum possible, renovation is still more costly than new construction. It also doesn't leave us any space to meet the other needs of the system. Naturally, as these elementary school children are moving up toward the secondary levels, they're putting pressure on both the middle school and the high school. We've been asked, among other things, why not build a new high school or a new middle school? Again, it's too costly. A new high school would cost more than the entire F.U.M.P proposal just for the high school. And it would still leave us with a domino set of buildings that needed renovations for other purposes. They'd then be looking at renovating the high school for a middle school, and the middle school for an elementary school, and so on. And it's not cost effective. We don't have land to support it. We would have to find land someplace, at Lord knows what expense. And on top of that, it's not needed. The high school was renovated 10 years ago. It is too small right now. The facilities that exist are sound. We just need to add a few more onto them. It's much more cost effective and educationally appropriate to do the additions to the high school. As far as the middle school, no matter what plan you look at, it's going to require some renovations. It's a 35-year-old building. There are many things that it needs right now just because of its age. But it is a middle school, and it functions well as a middle school. It would not function well as an elementary school. It's too spread out. It doesn't lend itself to the right kinds of supervision for an elementary school. It doesn't lend itself to tying in activities together properly for an elementary school. It works very well as a middle school with just a few modifications that will be necessary along with the renovations, bringing it up to current standards. The overall plan that we put together is far and away the most cost-effective and the most educationally sound proposal for the schools. And let me just emphasize the costs by pointing out that if the new elementary school and the new police station had been approved when they were first presented, the total cost for the two items together was slightly less than $11 million. That includes financing. Right now, it's going to be $17 million. It's grown over 50% in 3 years, partly because of inflation, partly because the interest rate has gone up on us, and that costs a lot. Partly because we now have more problems with housing students. If we had passed the original elementary school proposal, it would be coming online next summer. Instead, we're going to be asking for more modulars to deal with our enrollment problems for next September. We've lost $6 million. What have we got for it? We've got stress, we have terminations, we have a need for additional modulars. As far as I can see, that's all we've gained in putting this off. And I don't see that we'll gain any more by putting this off again. We can only lose more as the reimbursement formulae work against us as this becomes a more economically viable community. I can't stress strongly enough, we've already made a serious mistake putting this off. We can't afford to keep putting it off and compounding that mistake. This is the most cost-effective plan that we were able to come up with. It is the best plan in terms of meeting the needs of the town. We've managed to dovetail the two, and I can't add to that.
One of the other things that I think it's important to point out, because of the time frame what's taken place over the last 5 years, is that the new Swan Pond School proposal was part of an overall plan that was already previously approved by town meeting and the voters twice. I say that because part of the overall plan was, the first step was the little school renovation. Step 2 was supposed to be the Bachelor School replacement of the Swan Pond School, and the third step was to be the Hood School renovation and addition. And what we've done, we've gone from step 1 to step 3, and we skipped step 2. And what's happened is, and I just want to reiterate for the public's information here, is we have already bought into this program and this plan 5 years ago. We have committed a substantial amount of money, dollars, and effort to bring this plan to fruition. And to alter that plan, we've seen what's happened to it. When we made attempts to alter the plan and we got proposals and delayed in implementing it, it's cost us millions of dollars. So what we're looking for here, and again, we keep coming to the same conclusion. It's true, as people have accused us of coming to the same conclusion, but it hasn't been without reflection and without going back and revisiting the overall plan. But we have spent millions of dollars in renovations in addition to the little schools and the Hood School, which is now ongoing. Hood School, little school is complete. The other piece of the pie that must be completed